Labour is determined to wreck the public sector by entrenching low productivity while increasing costs. The civil service is bloated. There are nearly 100,000 more of them than in 2015, while productivity is low. Amazingly, since 1997, public sector productivity has fallen by an average of 0.1% per year, an unprecedented problem in a technological age. Meanwhile, the private sector's productivity has been growing, albeit too slowly. This ends up costing you money. As the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak pointed out on the campaign trail, public sector productivity is about 5% lower than it was before the pandemic. If we were simply able to bring that productivity back to where it was then, that would be worth £20 billion, and it would improve services. This sort of saving is equivalent to abolishing inheritance tax 3 times over, or nearly getting rid of all fuel duties. In other words, one of the main ambitions of any government ought to be driving public sector productivity to ensure you get value for your money. Alas, that is the opposite of what is happening. Not only has the Labour government engaged in a cynical quid pro quo with its union chums, taking nearly $500,000 in campaign donations before offering the unions massive pay rises, not only are they inflating idlers' rights, such as the right to switch off, but now the Prime Minister is backing the right to work from home, with Number 10 warning that a culture of presenteeism is bad for productivity. But we've seen, since people started working from home, productivity has fallen. So this is nonsense. Working from home has been tried and is failing. How many of my viewers have tried calling HMRC and actually both got through and received a sensible answer? If it really did lead to an increase in productivity, we certainly haven't seen it since its popularity increased during the pandemic. It was one of my main ambitions as Minister for Government Efficiency to get civil servants back to the office. And so you may see some irony that I, this week, am working from home. But I would otherwise be on holiday, but I didn't want to miss you. So here I am at home in the summer. Interestingly, Stanford University has done a study on the efficacy of working from home, and last year it showed that it was between 10 and 20% less productive. You see, we are led by people, as Ross Clark said in The Spectator today, who really don't understand what makes societies prosper. It doesn't lie with inflating workers' rights to switch off. It doesn't lie with the public sector, and certainly doesn't lie with working from home. The answer lies with unleashing the animal spirits of the private sector, cutting back the size of the overmighty state and rolling back its overreach. Deregulation, low energy costs, cutting taxes. Till the Labour Party realises this, we will be doomed to a future of high taxes, low productivity, low growth, making everybody poorer and idler. Being idle won't make you rich. As ever, let me know your views via mailmog@gbnews.com, and I've got a special reader of the mailmogs later on. But I'm joined now by the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, how very good to have you on. Do you think that working from home is going to make things more efficient or improve public services, or is just an idler's charter?
I think the problem with it, it sounds so attractive. And if you are an ordinary person and you're not paying huge, the cost of railways has just gone up thanks to what Mr. Starmer has just done. If you aren't paying to travel to work, and you're able to kind of get your nursery days fixed between you and your spouse and various other things, honestly, everybody who wants to will want to work from home. It is massively attractive, and equally it will be massively effective against productivity. No productivity can work where actually you are going to not face any kind of sense of delivery with somebody looking to make sure that you are delivering. There is a people are not actually made to do stuff on their own. There is a percentage out there who don't need a kind of a figure lying over them. they are a very small percentage. The rest, if given the choice, will work less hard and do tomorrow what, if they're in the office, they should do today. There is no doubt about it. That US polling or research that you did is an absolute shocker. If that happens to our country, right, we're already completely up creek, right? We're completely up it. If we lost 5 or 10%, then honestly, our taxes would be off the dial. If you take what Labour want to do, plus the quotes £22 billion hole, and we don't gain proper productivity, honestly, our country will be totally done for. It's a very, very serious moment in our time.
And isn't it one of those things that is self-evident that even people who like working from home know that they are less productive, that anybody with children who are at home finds that their workflow is interrupted, that things happen, that the telephone rings about the boiler? It's just something that is so startlingly obvious. It didn't really need Stanford University to do a survey to show it was 20% less productive. Common sense tells you that, and the government ought to have enough common sense to know that in the delivery of public services, it needs people to be in the office.
That is correct, but this is the issue. It is so attractive to work from home that actually, by the way, your own side actually seemed to be vaguely in favour of it. Boris was, right? So the situation now, I fear that the genie is out of the bottle. That Labour will want to serve those people who can say, for instance, the Guildford to Waterloo, the cost of commuting is £2,500 a year if you're a season ticket holder, right? It costs you an absolute fortune to put your kids in nursery. I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds. If people think that this is going to save them a lot of money, they are never going to go back to work. And I know examples of that right now. And the other thing I know examples of is that the boss class have caught on to this. They too are, quotes, working from home, fitting in tennis, seeing their mates, taking their kids to school. All those good things in life are massively attractive, and the effect will be we will pay a massive bill. If this conversation was taking place in 5 years' time, I guarantee to you our taxes will be off the dial. And all this nonsense about switching off, I tell you what would be better in this country if some of the workforce, I don't blame them, I blame the bosses, right, would actually switch on, that they would be committed to their companies rather than just thinking, this is easy money, I'll stay at home.
Well, Kelvin, as always, thank you for your forthright expression of views with which I agree with almost everything you've said. But joining me now, who perhaps won't agree so much, is a political commentator and former Labour spokesman, James Mathewson. James, thank you very much for joining me. You're very welcome on GB News. Now we've got statistical evidence about the lack of productivity from working from home, and we know just from common sense that this is likely to be the case. Why do you think Labour, trying to show that the weakness of public services was all the Conservatives' fault, aren't encouraging people to get back into the office so they can improve public services?
Well, Jacob, it won't surprise you to know that I disagree with you, and I actually disagree with the assumption that this is some kind of given and that it goes without saying. I think this study is important. It's important that we get statistics about workplaces, and trade unions run various surveys and studies in our own country as well. It's important to always take the temperature of workplaces, I'm sure you'll agree. And I'm pleased that you're comfortably at home, as you pointed out tonight. It shows you the benefits of this wonderful interconnected world we have tonight, that you can be in Mogg Manor and I'm in Mathewson Manor tonight, and yet we are still here being equally productive. I'm sure you agree. However, the survey from Stanford and that study showed something important, and that was that there was an increase of 13% in the quality of the work produced that was at home. So I do think we need to, this focus on productivity and the amount of work that is produced versus the quality of the work produced. And of course, the other thing we're not considering here, and I haven't heard you mention once, and Mr. Mackenzie sadly never mentioned it either, was the actual well-being of the workforce. The world is changing, and a lot of the times it's changing for the better.
On the well-being issue, I think that people who don't have families often find they have greater well-being being with the community that is a community of work, and that young people particularly have an advantage to get on when they're going into work, but are very isolated when they're working from home. And I think the isolation was something we saw very clearly during the pandemic. Actually, it was something I noticed with some of the people I worked with myself, that the community of work is a very beneficial one.
It is. Community as a whole is very beneficial. Everyone who went through the pandemic will attest to that. But I live alone. I'm a young person. I don't have any family. And I actually have a huge range of friends with differences on this. And I think that's important to acknowledge is if we're going to look at the world of work in the 21st century, look, you and I are going to disagree about most things. We're going to disagree about work especially. We have a different attitude towards it. We have a different belief in its role in society. However, I do think we can acknowledge the differences and the diversity in how people work. And I think it's important that we let them express those diversities. So I have friends who at the moment are working on a hybrid model. A few of them will a couple of days a week go into the office. They get their community access. They get access to those important group meetings and the kind of all hands meetings that take place. And then they can, decompress and work on those projects that they work in their own time. But of course, there are many people in this country who can't work from home because their role just simply won't allow it. So it's not as if everybody in the world...
That's such a good point. Could I just follow on from that point? Because, James, I think that's really fundamental, that very often the people in the lowest paid work, the people who are cleaning, from House Commons, I saw this in the pandemic, the people who were cleaning, the people who were providing security, they couldn't work from home. But the better paid, the boss class, for want of a better term, they were able to work from home. And there seemed to be a bit of an unfairness in this.
Yeah, there is, and I'm pleased you bring it up. And it is, class is a central feature of our country, and I would hope the Labour Party, being the Labour Party that I know and I joined as a young activist, and the Labour Party that is run by the trade union movement, our very proud and successful trade union movement in Britain, I would hope that they will acknowledge that and they will fight better. Things like Angela Rayner's plans for work and for the future of work, because the focus on people who can work from home, which you often point out is middle class people, people in project management roles, people in office-based roles, those who can't and who face going into work every day, when they hear things like this and they hear debates like this, they must be thinking, well, I can't even consider doing that, so what does it matter?
Well, thank you very much, James, for joining me, and thank you for saying that the Labour Party is run by the trade unions. I think that's a subject we'll be coming back to.